Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm here with Karyn, and we're here to answer some of your questions about grief. So today's question is it normal to be worried that I'm going to forget my loved one?
Okay, that's a good question. I don't know if you hear that one a lot. I feel like I do.
Mhm.
Um, I think it speaks to the nature of time and how in the beginning you don't even think about that. Like, maybe someone will have that concern, but it feels like over time that becomes a more pressing concern for people. And how we sort of expect time to be a healer to some degree, and that we feel like we're going to be getting better. But I think for some people there's also that sense that they're just getting further and further away from the last time they were with their loved one, so they just start to feel like they're just more out of reach, I think. And so it is kind of a scary idea. I do think it's part of what could possibly motivate a person, even like subconsciously, to want to stay in those grieving places because they're trying to hold on to something that feels like a connection. Um, what I often say to people is that through time, if we really, especially if we were fortunate enough to have, let's say a longer marriage or person in our life for a long time, then there's going to be a lot of memories. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be coming up um, for them potentially, but not everything. And I think there's those things that start to feel a little further out of reach. And what I try to remind people, and I think this is for me and my own losses too, is that we'll never forget the way a person made us feel. And if
Mhm.
we can really like tune into that and hold on to that, it's like some of those little tiny details, like exactly what their voice sounded like, or how they would have, handled a certain situation, or did they like this or not like it? I can't remember, but I think so much like that feeling a person gave us, that is just, it's right there. It's always right here. And I feel like that's ours to hold on to, and something that we'll never forget, and that we can always carry, and that we can always turn to for comfort.
Yeah,
So
I love that because you know what? When I was, as you were talking, obviously I'm thinking of like 8,000 things that I could talk about, but
yeah.
the sound of the voice. I know
Yes.
for me personally, when I reached that point where I couldn't really remember the sound of my mom's voice anymore, was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And I see that happen a lot with my grieving clients is once they get to that point, how hard that is. And thankfully now technology, like so many people have videos on their phone. I was with my dad for his 90th birthday and he was telling us some stories and I started recording them. And I save like all of my dad's voicemails, like for special events and
Yeah.
stuff, because I don't have anything of my mom's.
Mm.
And there was a video that I found, and it was from a trip to Disney. And I thought for sure my mom's voice would be on this. And so my sister converted it, and I watched it, and it wasn't. And I was so disappointed. And this was just literally last year.
Yeah.
Um, but that's really hard when you don't have that. And so whenever I work with people with like anticipatory grief, I'm like, make sure you do these videos, you take these pictures, you save voice, like, because of so many of these things is what my clients talk about they wish they had.
Yeah.
But I like what you said is the fact that it is really comes down to that feeling. Yes, do the memories change and fade, right? Yes, but I think they're always still there. It's about figuring out how we can tap into them as well.
Right.
For me, I recently did a practice session with a colleague who wanted to practice a technique, and I was flooded back with memories of my mom that I hadn't remembered in years.
Mm.
And I'm like, all right, so they're still there.
Yeah.
They may
Oh,
just
sure.
not always be to that forefront like we think. And so I don't think it's ever possible that we're ever going to forget them. I mean,
Right.
how can we?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, and the interesting thing about memories too, because even if we're really like trying to tap into stuff or looking through pictures, like sometimes the memories can be really sharp and
Mhm.
painful and sort of bring a hurt along with it. So people may find themselves staying away from certain things, so it's like, how do I hold on to them while not exposing myself to things that could be overly triggering? I think people are always kind of trying to find that balance. um I lost my stepdad 5 years ago, And it's interesting, I just cleared my throat as I said that, because the one thing I can remember is him clearing his throat. He must have done it a ton, but I couldn't tell you exactly what his voice sounds like or certain things. So even if there's like tiny little nuances, that you're just holding on to, and for some reason I almost find myself now trying to keep replaying that so that I still have that.
Right.
Um, but I guess it is a fear and a concern. But I think that's why it's so important when we talk about like continuing bonds and trying to maintain connections, honoring a person, talking about them, bringing their memory to family events and keeping things in your home, like whatever it may be, so that we have those connections,
Mhm.
in some ways. So it's a tough
Ask
one though.
people for stories, ask people for memories. I love
Yeah,
nowadays, like at funerals, they'll put a lot of funeral homes will put out cards so you can write a memory on it, right? Or you can even ask on Facebook where, oh, do you have any memories of so and so? And just to be able to get people to talk. And then that can also, I think, trigger your memories as well. And it
absolutely.
doesn't matter. I mean, we were at a funeral back in the fall, and an old neighbor, which I don't remember her, but my sisters did, um, started telling him a story about my mom. I never heard this story, and it was so nice to know that other people still think about my mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just me, my sisters talking about it, but it was actually like neighbors that, that she made an impact on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is such a important thing. And I think that's, with the forgetting part, maybe it's not even just always about us forgetting, but really worried about other people forgetting,
Mhm. I
you
agree.
know. Yeah, because that's like really scary. I had a woman one time, she was going to a family reunion, and we had talked about it ahead of time, and she was really concerned that people were just going to be like firing questions, and how are you, and are you okay? Her mom had passed away, and she hadn't seen a lot of the people since the funeral, and she's like, I don't know how I'm going to take this, people are just going to be asking me questions all the time. And we came back, I'm like, how was it? And she's like, nobody said anything. Like, no,
I'm
like
not surprised at all.
total
That's what I was
opposite.
thinking. I was like,
Total
unfortunately, this.
opposite. And we did always have a laugh about it. I was like, okay, well, we didn't exactly anticipate that, but I guess we should have.
Yep,
And so I was like, well, how did that feel? She's like, well, that felt even worse, like then
exactly.
nobody asked anything. So, we do want people to remember, and we are trying to kind of keep that legacy. I often say that like the people who I'm talking to and working with and who are seeking that grief support, I think are kind of like the torch holders, like trying to keep that fire lit and visible so that people remember this person and how special they were. So it's one of the challenges of grieving, is to try and keep your own memories close and then trying to keep it out there for other people too.
Well, I think, the reality is we assume that people don't remember or aren't thinking about it. There's some research out there that says like one somebody dies, it impacts 5 to 9 people in a
Mm,
family. And I just think that number is just so low
it does
because
sound it.
maybe family, but you're not thinking about all of that person's like people in their life, their coworkers, their neighbors, maybe their church members. Like we don't realize how much somebody's life can impact and how many people. Personally, for me, I had a mentor in my running program when I first started running a long time ago, and she was amazing. And unfortunately, she died from lung cancer. And there isn't a time that I don't run that I don't think of Lisa.
Mm, yeah.
And, I don't have any contact with Lisa's family or anything. They probably have no idea. And every time I do my other running program, two of the other people in the group also knew Lisa. And we bring up Lisa every session. At some point, we talk about some of the things that she used to say to us when we were running or whatever. Like, so you just don't know how much of an impact somebody has and how people are still thinking about them.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And it feels really good when you do talk about it. I think, and people like kind of worry, and I remember my friend one time, and this probably goes under that category of like, what do we say to people that are grieving? But
Mhm.
she was concerned about her mom because her grandmother had died. And she goes, sometimes I just don't know, like I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to make her cry. And I said, you're not going to make her cry. If she cries, you didn't make that happen. Like, there that those tears are just already right there. And she'll probably be really grateful to have the opportunity, to talk about it. But you can see why it's so hard for everybody.
It is, it is. But I
Yeah,
think I think the key points are the continuing bonds. How do you keep that connection? What can you do? Keep
yeah,
talking about them. Ask other people to share memories and stories. Bring up their name. You
yeah,
know, that one client of yours, maybe she could have done a toast at the family reunion that
right.
could have acknowledged her mom. And so, it would have maybe been, uncomfortable for other people. But at the end of the day, who cares? That may
Yeah,
have been good for her to do.
sure. Yeah,
So I think that's, I don't think you can truly ever forget somebody that you love. And I think you're right. Going back to that feeling that they gave us is so important.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Karen, for this excellent topic and answer. And so stay tuned for more questions from Kelly and Karen. Take care.